What's going on, everyone? It's GadgetsBoy. Welcome to another video. In my hand is the new Nokia 9 PureView, the smartphone with 5 camera lenses. And if you want to take a picture like this, or like this, or like this, then stay tuned and let's check it out. So we've seen a single camera lens setup like the Pixel 3 XL. We've got the Nokia 7 Plus here with 2 camera lens setup. Then we've got Oppo here with 3 camera lens setup, and the Mate 20 Pro with a quad lens setup here. But now we've got 5 camera lenses on the Nokia 9 PureView, and there's a reason for that, which we'll get into now and show you guys what that's about. So here we have 5 camera lenses here, like I mentioned earlier. So you got 3 monochromatic lenses at f1.8, 12 megapixel, and 2 RGB, so colors, also 12 megapixels at f1.8 as well. So what happens is every time you press the shutter on this, all the lenses activate at the same time. They take a picture simultaneously, all at the same time, and then they get fused together and they get processed for you to generate a RAW format image, or if you want JPEG, you can get that as well. Then you can do your post-processing in Lightroom, Snapseed, whatever kind of camera processing app or editing app that you use. Because it's got the 5 lens setup as well, there's also a thing on there called depth mapping. And all that means is you'll be able to get more better bokeh effect when you're taking photos, maybe portrait photography. It'll be perfect for that in that scenario. Also, the monochromatic imagery there allows more lighting to come into the smartphone here. It's double, if not triple, the amount of lighting that you'd get in a normal smartphone that's out there right now. So you should be able to get more details in there, sharper images, and so on. But we'll see that in a second and see how you get that popping. So when you open up the camera app, this is the interface that you get. So there's a lot going on here, so don't fret at all. It's very easy, it's straightforward. You got 2 times zoom by just pressing that, so you can zoom in. You can go 5 times digital as well, so if you come back out, back to 1 time. So this is standard mode here. And then where things really matter, depending on what kind of photography you want to do, is at the top there. For the sake of this video, the main thing that really matters here for me is that depth mapping function here. So if you tap that, you can put depth on or depth off. At the moment, I've got it on, so when I take that kind of photography, maybe a portrait shot, I've got an opportunity to go back into the shot to adjust the foreground and the background focus and stuff like that, to generate that bokeh effect as much as I want it, how intense I want it to look. So if we just come back out of that, if we go into settings, you might want to do this as well. So this phone here supports RAW format, DNG, which means you'll be able to take it into Lightroom and edit it afterwards. So tapping that, you can just go in there and choose to save RAW files in DNG format. So I've got that set up. And then everything else you can mess around with depending on what you want to do. My photo resolution, I've set it to max, so I get the best possible out of it. So once you've done that, those are the main thing that I would say you need to turn on and get going. We also have Pro mode, which means it allows you to do settings, adjust settings like auto white balance, so you can change your white balance to suit your preference. You can change the ISO as well, so just by scrolling, those guys who've had the Lumia back in the day, you'll be able to recognize that menu system there. And then you've got your shutter speed as well. This is great for shots like this one that I took in New York. Let me just scroll past, where I've got a motion blur in the background but following the car, so the car remains in focus, for example. If we go back to photography, besides Pro, you got bokeh mode. This is your background depth of field effect, so you can use that to take portrait shots, for example. I'll show you guys that also. And then your monochrome mode. In monochrome as well, you can shoot in RAW, so you can take it into Lightroom again and re-edit that to make it as strong as you want it to be, sharper, whatever you want to do, you can bring them out in post-processing. So if we go back into photography here, and I'll show you some of the shots that I've taken and show you how I then go further to edit them. So a shot like this, for example, which I took in New York, you can see it's a bit dark at the moment. That's because I was messing with the Pro mode and I was turning on the ISO and everything to get the best I can get at that point, so I can then edit it afterwards. So as you can see, if you took a shot with depth mode on, you got depth menu at the top, so you can then edit that and refocus it if you need to. But for now, what I can do is, if I don't want to use Lightroom, I can use the built-in system that's in the Nokia system. So I can use some of the filters there, but I'm not trying to use a filter. I can go into settings and I can adjust light, color, and the depth again through there. So if I go to light, I can expand that. And as you can see, this is a bit dark, so I can either expose it just a little bit more, increase the contrast just a tiny wee bit so I don't lose that darkness in there, the blacks. And then I can adjust the white as well as much as I want. So I think I'll bring it up just a tiny bit. The highlights is something that I tend to just see what that comes out like. But in this moment, it doesn't make too much difference, so I just leave that there, it's fine. Shadows, again, bring it up a tiny wee bit so we can still see some of the details. And then we've got blacks here, again, bring that down so it doesn't look that night moody mode. Vignette, I don't use that at all. It's something that I rarely use, and then I can make it pop even more if I really want to. Close lighting, I can go into color. So here I can then edit this to my style of photography. So again, if it's too oversaturated, I can bring it down if I want to, but I like it as it is because the yellow taxi, it's a very iconic thing in New York. And then the warmth, I might bring it down just a tiny bit because it's too warm. Leave everything else because I don't really want to mess with that. It's absolutely fine as it is. And then this is where the camera comes into place, the depth of field here, so I can change the blur. But what you need to do is you can move this to where you want the foreground and the background, but it's best to have something in the foreground and background as well in order for that to actually be useful. So you can move that around and then you can change the effect here. So you can see there, if I bring that all the way up and then tap onto the car, you can see that everything else is a bit more blurry. It's a bit more blurry than how it was before, which again, we can just turn that down a bit. There we go. I think just about there is absolutely fine. I'm happy with that. And then I can save a copy. Now I can share that to my social media profiles if I need to do so by just going there, and I can share it wherever I need to share it to. Or I can even share it onto Lightroom as well for further editing. So if I can come here, I can go into Lightroom, and that's adding to my Lightroom Photos album, which I can then go back into Lightroom afterwards and then do some more editing if I really want to. But that's more than adequate for that particular photo there. So here you can see the symbols here. So that sign there means it's a RAW format image, and that one there is a depth sensing image. So it's got depth sensing data there for post-processing. So if you go into this one, for example, here, you can see this shot. You can see the background's really blurred, the foreground's in focus. So this is RAW. So I can take that onto Lightroom and do a lot more to this. I can change the colors and everything as much as I wanted to. So if we go into this one, for example, with the depth sensing, I can go into settings here, expand that. You can see the depth there. If I expand that as well, you can see the blur, how much blur I want to do. So if I move this here, you can see the background is a lot more blurry. If I go back there, you can see straight away it's adjusting it to, that's now blurry, and the background is almost in focus, but I've already shot it like that anyway. But you can also mess with this foreground, so you get more focus. You can see there, it's shallower. I can get to the tiny minute details in the corner there. But if I bring it all the way down, then everything's in focus and the background's out of focus. So again, this is just down to your preference and what you're shooting. So you can move that around. But because the Nokia 9 PureView's got that 5 camera lens setup, you have enough data to be able to adjust that afterwards and do extra things that you might have forgotten to do while you're shooting when it's happening. Another shot, a good example again, is this one here. So as you can see, there's a lot of shadows here that you can bring out. Highlights, you can preserve it, or you can blow it all the way out, depending on your style of photography. As you can see, I've taken this with depth mapping in mind as well. So if I go back to settings here, cheers birdie, go into lights, as you can see I can go all the way to shadows. I can darken it if I wanted to look a bit moody and focus just on that tall building there, or I can bring it all the way up without losing too much of my detail. As you can see now, you can see everything that's in the foreground here. I can adjust the blacks now a little bit because it's starting to look a bit blown out. So at the whites a little bit. I like a bit of contrast, and I'm happy with that. Again, the highlights, as I mentioned, we can preserve it by turning it down, adjusting it accordingly. But I'd put it up a bit so it's a bit more blue, as you can see there, and the building still stands out. And you can see the glass as well, everything, the reflection looks accurate there. Put it back up, you can go into color, maybe adjust the warmth just a tiny bit, and then saturation just a wee bit. This will be great for Instagram because people love colorful shots. And we can adjust that deep blue because we've got the blue sky, tiny bit. Press and hold it, shows you the original. So we've done a subtle minor change there, but using the depth mapping sensor, the 5 camera lenses, the monochromatic ones, the color, we're able to adjust this and do whatever we want afterwards. So as I was saying earlier, you can also edit stuff in Lightroom, which I often use very much so. And this is my shots that I've imported into Lightroom. For example, another yellow taxi in New York. So here you can see, maybe I can show you the before and after actually. Yes, so you can see the before there, before I edited it. And then after edit, you can see that I've made the colors pop a bit more. Again, using Pro mode, I was a bit able to get some of that taxi in shot and get that motion blur naturally without having to do any post editing in Photoshop. If I go back out, you can see this sunset one here. That's not what it looks like originally. I've had to edit it to make it look a bit more sunsetty, like California sunsetty. So if you can see what that looks like now before, and then that's what it looks like after. And that's just by adjusting things like my light in there, my curves. If I go back to done here, I go back to my temperature as well, my colors and temperature. I've adjusted that as well, made it less vibrant, but just enough to do what I wanted to look like. Some clarity there as well. Sometimes I dehaze it if it's too hazy in the daytime, but I'm not going to do that to this shot. That's more than enough. And then if we go into like your flower shots, which I was talking about, you can see what that looks like. It looks amazing. You can edit that as whatever way you like. I can adjust the lighting again. I haven't touched this one yet. So exposure's right, maybe a bit more contrast. Adjust the highlights. Maybe go on the curve as well. Bring the bottom down a bit. Bring the mids just a bit up. And drop the top. Maybe drop this bit a bit more. So we've got some darkness in there, which looks really nice. Even in that curve as well, I can adjust the lights as well, the RGB, if I really want to. But where I go further down is get into color. So I go into my color mix. And we've got this red here. Maybe I can reduce saturation a tiny bit because it's looking too pink. Reduce luminance. Yeah, actually. Yeah, just a bit down. As you can see there, go into red. Again, drop that down a bit because I don't want it to look too purple pinky. Yeah, I think that pops now. It looks a bit more dramatic as well. Has a bit of emotion to it, which is what I'd go for when I'm editing photos like this. Come back out. Come back out so you can see that all the shots I've taken there, I take them into Lightroom and I can do some post-processing thanks to the Nokia 9 PureView's RAW DNG format that allows me to do that. A lot more details there, a lot more information that I can bring out, like toning it down as well if I really want to. I can do whatever I want with it basically. It gives me that extra flexibility. Yeah, I'll call you back, just finishing a video. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. So that's it for the Nokia 9 PureView and everything that you can do when it comes to photography. It's got 5 lenses, so you can do some post-processing. You have the flexibility to take some photos just the way that you like, whether you're an enthusiast, maybe you're just someone who likes to pick up and go. All the tips that you need are there for you. If you have any more questions, do ask in the comments below. In the meantime, make sure you give us that thumbs up, make sure you subscribe as well. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that notification bell button so you'll be one of the first people to know when there's a new video on this channel. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.